Welcome to Between the Panels. This is the premiere episode of the Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming comic book podcast. Let me introduce you to our trifecta of nerdy hosts. We have the singular, the there,
the bald,
the Ron Davis. We have the efficient,
the other bald,
the more bald,
Alex Yon, and the future bald, Ryan O'Loughlin. Welcome and thank you. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of our episode, which, spoiler alert, today we're talking about Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. We just want to do a little introduction of what we hope this project will be and also of ourselves. So first, we're kind of hoping to do sort of a book club format where we take a graphic novel or a arc from a particular comic series each month, give everybody a month's notice to read it, and then on the first Saturday of every month we'll publish our new episode where we do like an in-depth discussion of said book. So in April we read The Killing Joke. Yep. Here on the first Saturday of May we are publishing this. At the end of the episode we'll tell you what May's book is, and then the first Saturday in June we will publish that episode. I'm thinking this formatting is going to be easier than these two think it is, and I might talk them into twice a month in the future, but we're going to start off monthly and see how it goes, because new things. So, Ron, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what's your background with comic books?
Ron Davis. I started reading comics probably when I was 12 or 13. My first comic that I actually read was a Star Wars comic. I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And that led me into things like Wolverine. Wolverine was like the first, I guess, superhero foray that I got into. And from there I jumped into X-Men. And then Spider-Man, Superman kind of led me into all those things.
And today, what do you do?
Today, I'm the owner of Four Horsemen Comics.
Yes, located in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Yep.
Yeah. So comic books are a pretty big part of your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Humble beginnings.
All right, enough of you. And Mr. Yon?
I started comics probably 13, 14 years old, although I never got into Star Wars. God help me, I maintained my sanity.
This interview's over.
Pull the plug!
I'm the opposite of these guys. I never did the superhero or anything along those lines. DC and Marvel were always very low on the list of anything I'd pick up. I started off with Cerebus, Moonshadow, and kind of worked my way through a bunch of the kind of what would be classified as like the Image comics nowadays, the story-based comics, not the character-based comics, and my start was very much on the literary side. I used to be an English teacher, and I always wanted to see how to pull comics into the classroom, and so I was always reading for story, not necessarily for character.
And what do you do?
I am a CTO of a technology company. And so I have taken the nerddom to the next level and, managed to make a career out of it.
You're one of those nerds from 20, 30 years ago who's now making more money than all the guys who picked on you.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Hope so. I'm sure a couple of them are doing really well, and, I
hope not.
I'm sure they are, though. I'm Ryan O'Loughlin. I work for the Power Company, and I also do a lot of social media and video production here at Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming. So we actually kind of have three different perspectives on comics here. Because I am really into superhero comics. I'm a huge Marvel person. But my main focus in comic books has always been manga. I picked up my first manga when I was in 5th grade, so like 10 years old. It was Pokemon, and that led me into Dragon Ball, which led me into Gundam, which led me to this little book called Gunsmith Cats. And if you're unfamiliar with Gunsmith Cats, I was 11 when I found Gunsmith Cats. And that, if you don't know anything about it, there's just a little bit of the sex word in there and a little bit of the nudity word in there. And that really locked me into manga at an 11-year-old. And that was basically, I have read manga every day of my life almost since then, up through middle school, high school, college. I just reading manga voraciously. And in college, I got into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which led me to kind of start picking up superhero comics, particularly Wolverine, particularly X-Men.
Oh, yeah.
And that has led me to, I eventually started working here, started to broaden my horizons, big Walking Dead fan. I like Fable a lot, try to read other things. I like to think that I'm just a comic fan in general. I just love comics. But I definitely am rooted from manga. That's my history there.
Right.
Yes. All right, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to do a brief introduction of this month's book. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background info on it so we kind of know where we're standing. And then we have some discussion questions that we're going to kind of go deep on. That's going to be the real meat and potatoes of this. But first we're going to talk about, so The Killing Joke is written by Alan Moore. You may know him from other works such as V for Vendetta and Watchmen, which both have film adaptations. And it was drawn by Brian Boland, who is primarily a cover artist. He's done covers for big books such as Batman and Wonder Woman, but he also did An Innocent Guy and Camelot 3000. I've read An Innocent Guy. It's actually in the back of this. It's pretty cool. Just shout outs to letterist Richard Starkins, editor Dennis O'Neill, and the original colorist was John Higgins, who colored this one. It was first published in 1988, the year I was born. But unlike most books, this upon the re-release of this book, it was actually recolored by the original artist John Boyard in 2007. He had the opportunity to go page by page and do a full recolor of this book, which is pretty cool and something we will probably talk about later. So this book first came out in 1988, and at the time, graphic novels weren't really a thing.
Right.
You just had comic books.
Yep.
And like most graphic novels back then were really just collections of comic books, what we would refer to today as trade paperbacks, hardcovers.
Right.
But this was released as one book, as one 46-page release, which was kind of historic for the time. So this is this book has had a huge influence on comic book culture, on DC comic culture, and it even goes out into superhero film culture, and that's just the first thing. So it's commonly considered to be the definitive Joker story. It's one of the earliest Joker origin stories, which is something we're going to talk a lot about later. It's a loose adaptation. I don't know if you knew this or not. This is actually a little bit of an adaptation of Bill Finger's The Man Behind the Red Hood, which was originally released in 1951. Yeah, so a little bit there. Lays the groundwork for a big DC character, Oracle, Barbara Gordon.
Yep.
That's her persona.
Sets her up, yeah.
After Batgirl. Elements of the story have been incorporated in Batman media across all planes.
Yeah.
Comic books, video games, movies. That's something else we're going to talk more about later. Regardless of what you think of it, this book has heavily influenced writers, artists,
the medium,
fans, directors, actors. Very important book. All right, so let me see if I have anything else. It's won the Eisner Award in 1989 for Best Graphic Album, and we'll talk more about that later. That's basically all the background I had on it. Ron, what was your kind of general impression of this book going into this project?
So I'd only read this book a couple times going into it, and even then it was at the behest of my cousin, Casey. He's a huge Batman fan. Has one of the first printings of this book, and it's one of his prized possessions.
One of the original Four Horsemen.
Yeah, one of the original Four Horsemen. And Casey was always on me to read it, and I finally did. I liked the story. I didn't really pay that much attention to it until I read it a second time, and then a couple more times. I got a little bit more into it. Going into this, I have some pretty, standard views on the story. I know what I think, and I know that there's some confusion around parts of the book. But yeah.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Alex?
We'll be able to discuss why you're wrong.
I have detailed lists of why you're incorrect.
You're wrong, and I hate you, and here's why. I stole that from a Magic podcast, so go ahead.
I was not a very big superhero reader. I did appreciate certain Batman elements that have come out over the years, the Frank Miller's Dark Knight and stuff, and that a lot of that held my interest in the Batman character. So when I picked this up, and I was kind of taken aback. In my mind, I was a little more disappointed in having started with Frank Miller's Batman, and then coming to this one where he's trying to do good and so forth, versus just fed up with everything and screw it, we're going to take them all down.
Definitely two different Batmans.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but both coming from the same history, the same background, and everything.
This era of comics, in the late '80s, comics were kind of revitalized by Watchmen, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, and this book.
Right, and so the first time I read it, I was disappointed. The second time I read it, I started, going a lot slower and kind of breaking down all of the different elements of what was going on, and I truly appreciated the format and structure, the cuts back and forth between the telling of the origin tale, the coloring, the quote unquote black and white, but with the red emphasis, and as you're just moving through it, the cross between, in one scene the Joker's character has his hands over his head and is in distress, and the immediate next panel is Jim Gordon in the same position. And I liked, from that structure standpoint, how they put it all together. And then as I read it a few more times, especially preparing for this, getting into the kind of psychology and cultural or sociology that they're trying, Alan Moore always has a sociological push that he's trying, an agenda that he's trying to do, and how he's fitting that into the Batman and the Joker motif, trying to elicit sympathy at some points, not necessarily for the Batman side, but for the Joker side, and there for the grace of God go I, maybe not, so.
I had a little bit of a similar experience to you, where this was built up to me to be like the second best Batman book. I have a friend who's a huge Batman fan, rightly so. And he gave me this book and The Dark Knight Returns, and he said these are the best two things that have ever been written. So he kind of built them up to an impossible odds. Right. But both of those books do kind of have that legacy, where they're like
very much so.
So when I initially read it, I liked it. It was a very good book, but it didn't kind of meet the legacy I was anticipating. But working on this project, I have read it 3 more times, and I have grown such a greater appreciation for it in terms of the story and the construction, a lot of the stuff that you said, but more particularly, my greatest appreciation of it is the art. And I think walking away from it, if I were going to recommend this book to somebody, it would be primarily a visual thing. Brian Boland just hit this thing out of the park.
Oh, yeah. I love the red accents and the shapes that he incorporates. In one of the scenes in the flashback, the wife is sitting at a table, and there's something red in the bowl. And when you look at it, you're like, I'm not quite sure what it is.
Red?
What it is, but and then when he's at the bar, they're all eating the shrimp, and the shrimp are red. And so she's eating the shrimp at the same place. But the funny thing is, the only other red thing in there is the light bulb and the fly tape. And it's just I really appreciate the way they had the color emphasis to tie particular elements together that just didn't seem like they needed to go together, but it made a consistency throughout it.
Right. All right, we're going to come back to this topic. We're going to go ahead and dive into our discussion questions, and they kind of follow the story from start to finish, and then the later ones talk a little bit more about art and color and such. But we're going to go ahead and jump in here to number 1, and I got a lot of these. I'm going to give you the sources on these. A lot of these come from the Batman Book Club, and you can find them at thebatmanbookclub.tumblr.com. Definitely check them out. They were a huge resource in putting this thing together for me. All right, so our first question, the story is framed with Batman monologuing about his fears of what will happen if the status quo keeps going, and the status quo being like he battles the Joker, he puts the Joker in jail. Joker gets out, kills people, he puts the Joker back in jail, repeat.
Lather, rinse,
And
repeat.
he's worried about this. He thinks that it's going to eventually go to both of them dying. So at the beginning of the book, he's going to Arkham Asylum to kind of have this one last appeal to the Joker, like, let's stop this, because it's going to end in your death, my death, or both. So the question is, do you believe that the Batman's appeal to the Joker for change was for the Joker's benefit, Batman's benefit, or for both of their benefit? Alex, I want you to answer first.
To me, and this is going to be sacrilege to most Batman fans out of there. To me, it's a weakness on Batman's part. I implore you, please quit doing what you're going to do, because it's going to cause a bad thing for either both of us. Either I'm going to feel guilty because I killed you, or you're going to kill me, or we're going to kill each other, and there's no point to all of this. And it's just, to me, it harkens of weakness that Batman is beginning to doubt his mission, or beginning to doubt his direction, or anything like that, or maybe he's just coming to terms with the fact that he is mortal, and if he keeps playing this game, the Joker is going to come and get him at some point. I can't say that he was doing it for the Joker's benefit. It keeps coming back to me that he was doing it only for his own benefit, because he's had more than enough opportunities to deal with the Joker that he says we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. What is it, Einstein, the definition of insanity?
Yeah.
You do the same thing over and over again expecting different results. So he's changing tact to get a different result, because he can't, doing what he's been doing isn't working. So and it always harkened to me as weakness on his part.
So establishing here, we have, there's a bunch, Batman is maybe like maybe in all of literature, the character who has been written the most, maybe. And there's this traditional view of Bruce Wayne where he has this no-kill rule. I don't kill people, I can find another way. Of course, he's been written in different ways where he kills people. Like Frank Miller's Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, for instance. But it's kind of establishing here in the beginning, this is a more traditional Bruce Wayne who is trying to find another way, who believes rehabilitation is possible, and that's why he keeps sending the Joker back to jail instead of killing him. Ron, do you have any thoughts on this?
I actually think that the reason that he's coming there is it literally is a last-ditch effort. He realizes the futility of his efforts, and Batman is a very logical human being. He is not going to keep chasing his tail, and he's basically going to the Joker one last time saying, listen, dude, this is it. Keep it up. Something bad's going to happen to you. I don't think anything bad's going to happen to Batman. I don't think he is really threatened by the Joker. While he's always been sort of his nemesis, I don't think that he really, like I said, was very threatened by him throughout their arguments back and forth. But I think that he was genuinely concerned for the Joker's well-being. He really, really wanted to just have this one last ditch effort to try to salvage this man. And it's kind of sad that the Joker actually never heard any of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Might have been different.
We have this traditional Batman.
Probably not.
And he has this rule, like, I don't kill people. So he's following this pattern, and he's realized I've hit a paradox.
Yeah,
this is never going to end.
Yep.
And he's looking for an escape, and what he can come up with is going to the jail and asking please
please quit.
So I mean, we're setting the stage here, and you see page 1 with him pulling up to Arkham Asylum and Jim Gordon waiting. I love Jim Gordon handing his coffee off to the cop there. It's hilarious. But you see, we're setting the stage. Batman is desperate. That's where we're at beginning here.
It's the end of his rope.
All right.
And that's why I always have problems with it, because the character of Batman should never be desperate.
But you're also okay with the Batman who's just like put a bullet in his head.
I'm okay with that.
I'm very much okay with that.
I'm good with that.
I mean, if I look at it this way, if we have sanctioned someone to operate outside of the guidelines of the law, and
we're just haggling over.
So why not let him do that?
Right. I mean, you're either going to say, do this, and we're going to cover it up for you, or quit because you can't do this.
Yeah. Right.
And putting a moral sheet over it saying, oh, you can do this, but don't kill them.
Don't go this far.
No.
Yeah.
You're still criminal element regardless if you do it all the way or do it halfway. You're still there.
I see what you're saying. All right, we're going to move on to our second question. So the Joker is arguably the most dangerous foe that the Batman ever faces. I think nobody's going to argue that.
No.
So he's committed murder countless times for the sake of his own enjoyment. He's been established as basically he's insane. He's killing to kill.
He's off the rails.
Some men just want to see the world burn.
Yep.
That is the Joker. Does the origin story here that depicts him as a common man with a wife, with a child on the way, who's struggling to make ends meet, to, essentially pay the bills, does that affect your internal view of the Joker in a positive way, in a negative way? Ron, go ahead.
That part of the story really didn't affect me too much because I was never convinced if that was actually what really happened. That is, I just think that the Joker has completely lost any shred of reality grasp that he had, and he's just fixating on pieces and kind of stitching them together in whatever story that fits the current tale that he's trying to tell. But who is he trying to tell this particular piece of the story to? Because he's not talking with anybody. This is just kind of...
Yeah, this isn't part of a narration. So
yeah,
if you've never read this before, pause, go read it, come back. But essentially, there's two timelines that we're exploring here. We're exploring the current timeline, which is this current conflict between Bruce and the Joker. And it's also just randomly jumping back to this origin story of the Joker. But it's not part of their narration. It's not like you hear the Joker saying, I remember, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just cutting there at appropriate times.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw out the Breaking Bad defense. You guys watched Breaking Bad?
I watched one episode and never watched another one immediately.
All right.
It's okay. We'll get through this together.
And I still haven't watched all the Star Wars movies.
It's okay to hate him now.
One of the concepts out of the Breaking Bad thing that has become very much talked about and researched, in all honesty, is that the character of Walter White did not become Eisenberg. He already was. It was just the ability to let it out. So it existed in him all along. His having cancer became I got my get out of jail free card. I'm just going to be what I truly am. And I look at the Joker's character the same way, because if you go through this, he's a whining, sniveling, I've got nothing going for me. I mean, he's constantly, please, please, please.
Yeah.
He everything is someone else's fault, and so he's like, even in the origin story, he's trying to put I became this way because everything happened to me, and woe is me.
Yeah.
But no, everybody had a choice. He could have at any point decided to go back and do his chemical job because it paid well.
Assuming.
Yeah.
We're assuming.
We're assuming. Yeah. I mean, because
he had the choice to not quit.
Right.
Also,
I mean, so all of this is choice on his part, and then there are consequences to the choice. I mean, how many people come back and say, I think I'm going to commit one big crime just so I can get out of all my debt? Has that worked for anybody ever? No, Ron. It will not
I'll
work.
be right back.
Isn't there a show about that, about a bunch of housewives who are going to rob a bank?
I think there was, yeah.
I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah.
We should probably talk about Batman more.
Regardless, His origin story to me cemented the fact that he has no redeeming characteristics.
So he was
There is
predisposed to be the Joker forever.
Well, he's predisposed to not be accountable for what he does, and his insanity is the ultimate of I'm not accountable.
Yeah.
And whether it's truly insanity or is he faking his insanity so that he can be insane, is he truly sane and faking it so he can get away with everything he does and not be killed, not be sent to the chair, or is he, truly insane? At which point, I don't think any of this stuff makes sense because he's too organized. He ends up with too many really complex plans that pull off for the most part. And
pretty well,
and he has a whole list of things that he accomplishes. So I'm going to go with he's more on the faking side, and this is just more fodder to show that he's missing his accountability, or he doesn't want to be accountable for his actions.
But even though that the two personalities are completely
Are they?
opposite, because you got the Joker who's very confident and very in your face. This
Right.
guy is scared of his own shadow.
He's scared of his own shadow until he lost her. So there's no
Then he
reason.
didn't care,
Okay, so now I don't have a reason to be scared of my own shadow. I don't have a reason to kowtow to anybody. I don't have a reason. I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So, throwing in here, just this part. The first time I read this part, where his wife dies, where the cops come and pull him out of the bar, and it's like, hey, your wife got electrocuted and now she's dead. It's these two frames down here in the corner where it's just silence, and it's just what? Like I really feel the pain there. Like
he's trying to process it.
True. Yeah. Like your brain cannot process that. But going back to our original question here is, on my first reading of this, I was a little put off that he even has an origin story to begin with, because so the Joker to me is like the opposite of what a good comic book villain should be. So my favorite comic book villain is Magneto, and part of that is because he's such a well-defined character with a great origin story and powerful motivations where you really understand why he's doing,
where he's coming from.
And if you don't agree with him, you sympathize with him. But the Joker, to me, was great because he's kind of the complete opposite, where he's just basically chaos personified. And you can't give chaos an origin story. But at the same time, I really like the actual story that they're telling in this flashback. It's just because it's just a well put together story. But I agree with everything you said. That he's a windbag. He's terrible, but it pulls you in.
Yeah,
it does. I mean, the way they build it up. Now, again, the weakness of the character comes from the fact that he goes back in and he doesn't walk away.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I would have, it being me, but again, I'm not in this. You get the what? You're not going back in the bar and sitting down and having a drink between your criminal friends. You're actually you're leaving. You're going home. You're going to the hospital. You're going somewhere. You
might stay at the bar for a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's you're not thinking about.
You're not thinking about committing that crime.
Yeah, no, that is completely gone.
Your entire motivation for that crime was to support. Now, granted, in his defense, they do threaten him. Like he tries to stop, and they say you can't.
Yeah, you're not.
But I think I agree with you.
They're like, sorry about your luck, but
in that case, I probably would have told them to go to hell. And
I mean, at that point.
Sure,
everything is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm next. What does it matter?
Yeah.
And so I while I understand the sympathy structure that they're putting in place here, it did not make me want to feel any sympathy towards the Joker himself.
For me, it wasn't sympathy so much as it was understanding. Yeah. Because I sympathize with him that his wife died and his child died. I don't sympathize with him because of the decisions he made, like you said. But it's less about the sympathy and it's more about the understanding, because I probably would have went off the rocker too. But all right, so that was good. Let's move on. All right, question number 3. The Joker insists that it is one bad day. That's all it takes to drive anybody crazy. And the whole point of this is that, well, in the current timeline, Joker busts out of Arkham, and he wants to prove this point to Batman, to the world, to himself, whoever. And the palette that he's decided to use to paint this masterpiece is Jim Gordon. He is going to break Jim Gordon, because essentially within the Batman canon, not the DC canon, but within the Batman canon, Jim Gordon probably has the strongest moral fiber.
Oh, hell yeah.
He's the ultimate good cop. He's so good that he's the one cop that's okay with bending the rules to allow this vigilante to do his thing because it's getting results and ultimately it's a good thing. Right. So he's gonna break Jim Gordon using his daughter Barbara, which, if Joker gets anything right, he knows that the daughter is the way to break the father. That is
that would do it.
So true.
All three of us know that.
That would do it.
And so he bring up the page. Derp, 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 derp. Boom! I had that queued up, and then I brought up this other one. So he goes to Jim's the Gordon's apartment. He shoots her, then he strips her. He takes these
compromising photos,
and he takes Jim back to this carnival that he's purchased, and he essentially tortures Jim with these photos, and in order to break Jim and prove that anybody can have one bad day and go mad. So after all of that, the question that we're getting to here is, do you think the Joker understands Batman to an extent, and do you think that makes Batman uncomfortable? Because the Joker's under the assumption that the Batman had one bad day, which brought him to becoming a vigilante, which we know is true.
Right.
So go ahead, Alex.
I don't think it was one bad day. That was the beginning of a set of circumstances.
For Bruce?
For Bruce. Because if you look at Bruce, he was, 12 years old? And Batman didn't come about until he was probably his mid-20s.
But it definitely set him on that path.
It definitely set you on that path.
One day.
But that's the thing. The event was a starting point. During that next round figure 10 years, we have all sorts of opportunities to make decisions and change things or do things different or whatever. It's a sequential thing. He's oversimplifying the fact that, yes, his wife and child died in one day. He then was part of a massive
attempt.
Robbery and got
failed heist,
and got jumped, not pushed, jumped into the water, which happened to be full of chemicals, which then twisted him up. Now, the thing that I'm looking at is his may have been one bad day, but it wasn't a singular event. He had all of these things happen in the one day, and what he's doing to Gordon is a misinterpretation of that point. He lost. Gordon didn't lose. Gordon's daughter was shot, but she survived. She was humiliated, but she's still here. And he's being shown it all within a 6, 8, 12-hour period. That's not an equivalency.
Yeah.
And the bad day, he's missing the point of the bad day. It is the absolute and utter loss. Batman lost his parents. There's no coming back from that. Joker lost his wife and child. There's no coming back from that. And this is humiliation, and this is, I have power and you don't. But that's not, it doesn't bear the same.
I'm going to give you a chance to add to this if you can.
Yeah.
But I want to add a follow-up question to that. So, all right, now we're in Alan Moore's head. He's writing this. So the essential difference is Bruce's parents died. The Joker's family died. Barbara Gordon, not dead. If you're Alan Moore, you're writing this, and let's assume he has the freedom to do what he wants. You're writing this offshoot that's not part of the current Batman run. Why didn't he kill her? Why not kill Barbara Gordon?
Yeah. I don't think he had license to kill her.
I think but let's, for the sake of discussion, let's assume he did.
He could have killed her.
It could have been something along the lines that Joker left her for dead, because he shot her, She's bleeding out on the floor.
She falls through a glass table.
And she's paralyzed. He takes his photos. He takes Gordon, and he leaves. He did not know someone was coming over that
Pauline.
evening. Because he would not have been aware that she was going to yoga that night and someone was coming to pick her up.
Right.
So there is she survived on accident.
Yeah.
He was probably going to leave her to die. But still, even if that was his intent, his humiliation and everything did not focus on the fact that she was dead and it was Gordon's fault, or his lack of decision, or his inability to do something caused the problem.
I think the Joker and the Batman both had the bad days, but the difference is the Joker fixated on that one bad day as a singular event that changed the course of everything. Batman used it as a source of passion, as a source of strength, as a source of, this is never going to happen again. I'm going to make sure that this never happens.
All right, Ron, I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to read question 4, and I'm going to let you continue on that train of thought, because that essentially is question 4. So, the next one is that critics argue that the Batman and Joker are essentially two sides of the same coin. Mm-hmm. We're not making a Harvey Dent joke here, Ryan. Sorry.
Resist.
Do you agree? Do you not? How are they similar? How are they different? Just keep going with what you were doing.
I think that they're very similar. I think that they both had bad days. They both had something terrible happen to them. It all comes down to how they deal with those circumstances. The Joker decided to go off the rails and stay off the rails. Bruce went off the rails. He sort of came back on the rails a little bit, but he kind of focused his insanity into dressing like a bat and beating the crap out of burglars.
As you do.
Yeah. The Joker, not so much. The Joker just, he embraced the chaos. He embraced the madness, and he just wants to take everybody down with him that he possibly can.
I can't argue with that. I mean,
Can I get that replayed?
I'm
like
going to put
soundbite of that.
That's going to be a highlight. It's good. I'll send it to you. It can be a notification on your phone.
Yes. That's when you're right.
Because what you're looking at is, again, for me, it goes back to the accountability thing. The Joker has decided that this has removed everything happened to him. Mm-hmm.
And he had no...
And therefore, his response, whatever it is, it's not his fault. Mm-hmm. Bruce Wayne, on the other side, what happened to him, he, like you said, he started focusing it, this shouldn't happen to anybody else. I'm going to take some accountability for this because I'm going to use this to help prevent this from happening. Now, his methodology is where you have to go into questions. Now, admittedly, a billionaire, you get bored and you figure out things to do with it. Why not? But the idea in that progression is his progression was very slow. It was over time, and he processed it. Mm-hmm. And it quite possibly had assistance from Alfred or somewhere else that gave him that ability. He never got over it. As throughout all of the Batman lore, we've never gotten over it. Mm-hmm. But he has channeled it in an appropriate manner, and I think it is the time issue. Yeah. The fact that it happened when he was a child to before the Batman showed up. That's the issue.
Yeah.
He happened.
Kids rebound easier than adults.
We can argue about that at a completely different time. But the Joker, everything is happening within one day.
Right.
The image that you have on the screen right now, the green hair and the white face and the whole 9 yards, and how everything just, you're in a 24-hour period. And when you go off the rails that quickly, if there's no one to help get you back on the rails,
just keep going.
That becomes the new normal.
He had no support system, where Bruce had at least Alfred.
Right, and one would assume,
money.
Yeah,
lots of money.
With money and Alfred, there was something else, some other support system that's in play there.
Yeah.
There's been alluded to in various Batman stories and stuff that Batman had a therapist for years. Mm-hmm.
You would imagine the rich kid who just witnessed his parents murdered.
Oh yeah,
that's
all kinds of therapy.
Somebody
just
is
throwing
talking
money at a doctor's office.
Yep.
Make him right. Okay, I think we covered that pretty well. Moving on to our next one, and also I also grabbed some of these questions from CBDLF Discussion Guide. Just Google them; they have some cool stuff as well. All right, so number 5, the Killing Joke marks the moment where the Joker says one of his most famous lines: "If I have to, no, I'm not even gonna try. If I have to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice." And if you read about the origin of the creation of this book, that's where Brian Bullard, because the artist actually initiated the creation of this book, he went out to Alan Moore and he said, "This is what we want to do. We want to do a origin story, not the origin story of the Joker." So what we're getting at here is, given that declaration, do you think that the origin story depicted here is the true story, or is it just a fabrication of the Joker's past? Is this something that his mind has concocted, or is this one of a multitude of origin stories that the Joker could have? Do you think he should have this definitive backstory?
No, I liked the Heath Ledger Joker. You want to know how I got these scars? He never gave the same answer because he had no idea. He could not remember whatever traumatic event happened. I'm sure that there are bits of truth in all of this, but I don't know that we've actually heard the Joker's origin story.
That's what I was touching on earlier. I like the Joker as a mystery.
Yeah, like a little fuzzy.
I mean, I like the fact that when you're coming in and they're walking down the hallway to the Joker, it says unnamed or unknown is on the door. It doesn't say the Joker.
Yep.
It doesn't have his name. You see H. Dent and Harvey's looking through the thing. Everybody else has a name.
Yeah, they see Cobblepot later, the Penguin.
Yep.
Right, but the names are there.
Yeah, but he doesn't have one.
Right, and this one is the only character without a name. And so, I mean, even going back culturally, names have power. And so if you can withhold your name, you can withhold people's power or hold over you. And I've always liked the fact that there's whatever he says, you can't believe.
Right.
And so it could be true, it could be false, but it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's whatever. It's what he needs out of the moment.
The big irony of this book is that Bullard and Moore set out to tell a story that could be one of a plethora of Joker origin stories, and they accidentally created the Joker origin story. So much so, in fact, that this previous scene here was actually used as the Joker origin in the first big money Batman production, the first Tim Burton movie, where the circumstances are different,
right?
But Jack Nicholson's Joker falls in this vat. He comes out and he's crazy, and that's that. And not just that, but it's been used multiple times throughout comics. It's been used in video games. There have been other Joker origin stories, but this is the one that people come back to.
Even the Suicide Squad pulled this out.
Yep.
Because when in the making of Harley Quinn, he said, "You have to do what I did."
Yep.
And through what I went through.
And they keep pulling it in and cementing it more and more as the origin story. But again, you're right. I don't want an origin story.
Yeah. I'd rather be ambiguous.
I wouldn't mind him having an origin story every couple of years and it being completely different.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I would expect that.
I think that's what Alan Moore and Brian Bullard wanted.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yes, I agree. Good job, everybody. Good job, team.
Hey, we all agreed on one.
All right, moving right along. The ending of the killing. Oh, okay, we're getting into the big one. All right, we're gonna skip that. We're gonna come right back to one. Number 7. Why? No, all right, let's do it. Number 6. The ending of The Killing Joke has been a major point of controversy and debate. What do you think happened between Batman and the Joker, Alex?
They went out for ice cream, right?
Let's
holding hands and skipping.
Hold on. Let's actually just read through the joke here. So we've got the last 3 pages of The Killing Joke, and essentially what happens at the end here is Batman comes. We'll talk more about Jim Gordon later, but he frees Jim Gordon. He gets the Joker. He's beaten him, and the Joker starts to tell this joke. Ron, why don't you read the joke for us?
It starts on the next page.
Yeah, we need the next page.
Yep. Boom, baby.
All right. See, there was these 2 guys in the lunatic asylum, and one night they decide they didn't like living in the asylum anymore. They decide they're going to escape. So, they get up on the roof, and there, just across the narrow gap, they see the rooftops of the town stretching away in the moonlight, stretching away to freedom. Now the first guy, he jumps right across with no problem. But his friend dared make this leap.
Daren't. Dare not.
You see, he's afraid of falling. So the first guy has an idea. He says, hey, I have my flashlight with me. I'll shine it across the gap between the buildings, and you can walk along the beam and join me. But the second guy, he shakes his head. He says, what do you think, I'm crazy? You just turned off when I was halfway across. When I read that the first time, I actually laughed. I
laughed
funny
too.
Joke.
I
thought that was a very funny joke.
And the best part of the whole book is the Batman laughs with him.
Yeah, he
this
laughs.
middle frame here in this page, like that could be my phone wallpaper. That is just great. But back to our topic. All right, Alex, I'm gonna give you first crack at this one.
What I want to have happened.
Give us both.
In the middle panel, he's got his hand out, and from what you can see, it looks like it's only one hand. And then you look down and you see his feet. And I think, the laughter stops the next to the last panel. He broke his neck and killed him. It's just, he's done. That was a great joke, but we're not getting past this point. You've crossed your lines enough, and there's no way, there's no coming back. There's no fixing you. There's no rehabilitation. There is no redeeming quality. To me, the fade to black that's going on in the rain puddles is kind of what I get out of it, or what I want to get out of it. Mm-hmm. The lead up to this is Gordon saying, we have to do this by the book. We have to do this by the book.
I want him brought in.
But remember, Batman says, I will try.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say I will or anything like that. He does say,
give it the old
I'll do my best.
Yeah, I'll do my best. By the book you hear, we have to show him. But the problem is, whose book?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the ironic points of this is that, he tries to break Jim. He doesn't.
Right.
And Jim Gordon comes out of this saying, I want this done by the book. We have to bring him in. We have to show him that our way is good. Now, you masked vigilante, you go out there and bring him in by the book.
That I'm clearly breaking by employing a masked vigilante.
But still, but this is Jim Gordon's book, because obviously he's okay with this. But
yeah,
Ron, you agree with Alex here mainly?
Go to the last frame.
Okay.
Or the last page, rather. So I have a little bit different take on how this thing ended. Joker tells a joke. We see Batman go, huh, and then we see him go, ha, ha, ha. The we at the bottom is the police cars coming. Batman is not laughing. The Joker is laughing his damn head off until the second to last frame when the Joker stopped, or the third frame. Police cars are still coming, hence the ee.
He definitely is laughing because there's a speech bubble.
Well, he's laughing there, but I don't think he's actually laughing in unison with the Joker there. I think he's having a sensible chuckle.
Right, because in the middle row, those are the headlights of the oncoming police cars.
Mm-hmm. And I think...
Or they're flashlights of them.
Oh, yeah, running.
So the last panels, I think, tell the entire story. The last two panels is what this book is all about for me. Joker kills him in the third panel.
Kills him?
Or the Batman kills the Joker.
Twist ending.
There is a line between those two. And in the end panel, there is no line anymore. But go to the very first panel.
The very first page.
Very first page. Look at the last panel.
See, did we have some foreshadowing? Is that what you're telling me? I missed something?
It starts over. It is cyclical. The Batman lost his mind, killed the Joker, and now we've started all over.
Or he lost his mind because he doesn't kill the Joker. He's stuck in this paradox where he sends the Joker back to jail, and Joker gets out, does something bad. Yeah.
But I think this book is very cyclical. It just kind of keeps repeating itself. But I think that the Batman... I definitely think he killed the Joker, but I think it cost him his sanity.
So, I think he didn't, but that's because I don't want him to.
Yeah.
And both of us want him to.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. We're okay with him killing people.
My favorite Batman is always, the the traditional one, the Chris Nolan one, the one who's, I'm going to find another way. I'm a big Steve Rogers guy, but although Steve Rogers doesn't have a kill roll, but that's a whole different.
I was going to say
that's a whole different
take
thing.
People out.
Yeah, no, he has no problem taking people out. But then again, Bruce wasn't in World War II.
Yeah.
All right, but going back, that's just what I want to see out of Batman. I want to see him find another way. But the way the story is constructed, I will admit it's constructed where Batman almost has to come to the realization where he has to kill the Joker, unless you subscribe to this cyclical theory, in my interpretation, where at the end he decides not to kill him, and then we're back at the beginning of the story where the Joker's in jail and he's breaking out of Arkham Asylum.
Right.
But I want to take a pause. If you get the hardcover special edition of The Killing Joke, there is an afterword by the artist Brian Bolliard, which is really great. And the cool thing about this is the introduction and the afterword are both done by artists, not writers, which is kind of cool. But at the beginning of his afterword, here at the end, he says that he's going to tell you what happens. And then so I'm going to fast forward to the last paragraph of the afterword. Speaking of which, it's time that I revealed what really happened at the end of The Killing Joke. As our protagonist stood there in the rain laughing at the final joke, the police lights reflecting in the pools of filthy water underfoot, the Batman's hand reached out and...
The end.
Dot.
People can argue this as much as you want.
Oh,
there is no end.
No.
It's purposely ambiguous.
Yep.
We each find in the ending what we want to find. I want Bruce to have not have killed him. You guys want him to have killed him.
I want him to fully become Batman. You can't be a mask. Well, not even Frank. The Frank Miller Batman was just fed up. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had retired and he was coming out of retirement.
And he was mad about it.
And he was like,
"I'm tired.
You pissed me off." And now,
get off my front lawn.
I have tried for all of these years to do the right thing. Now I'm just going to do what's necessary. Mm-hmm. I have always thought that if you're going to put on a mask and you're going to become that vigilante point,
why have a rule?
You might as well be willing to embrace it. If you don't go half-assed into it, go all the way and take it to its logical conclusion.
But isn't that what the Joker did?
The Joker started there. He did. He embraced his insanity and he went wild with it. I think Bruce needs to embrace his insanity and go wild with it.
So,
I mean, we support him because we like what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you step back and you look culturally. We support all sorts of horrible cultural activities because they benefit us.
Right.
The wiping out of indigenous races. Of course, let's go do that because that gives us more land. We don't have a problem with that. Nowadays, we have a problem with that because it's not something. I mean, we look back at our history
100 years ago.
Right. We look back at our history and go, "Oh, that was horrible. How could we do that?"
I can't be blamed for that.
Right. And so, but we have this moral outrage after the fact. After it, we don't have that personal benefit to it anymore. And so Jim Gordon is allowing Batman to do what he wants because he gets a personal benefit out of it. People are going to jail. Mm-hmm. The crime rate is dropping, or the violent crime rate has changed, or something along that line is benefiting the police, so they're not going to intervene. They're going to allow it to happen. So if you're in that point, be willing to go all the way.
I think that our opinions here are very much built on the Batman stories that we've read and that we've liked. So it seems like a lot of this is built on your reading of The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
I didn't really like The Dark Knight Returns. I
love the fact they beat up Superman.
I loved. That was the saving grace. But I'm typically like Frank Miller as a writer has never really engaged me. And a lot of my opinions here of having this, I like the kill roll Batman is, I don't really like Frank Miller's Batman. So I think we're seeing our preferences come out in our interpretation.
Very much so.
This, yeah.
And with any of these comic books, though, you're going to take your your cumulative knowledge and experiences and apply it. You don't have military experience. I have military experience. And so when I look at some of these things, I look at it in a completely different way than you'd look at it. And when I see, when they bring in military characters and stuff, I immediately judge the way the characters are written or the way the characters are drawn or things like that because of my history.
Right.
You may not ever look at those characters the same way. Like the Captain America thing. The fact that there's a no-kill rule. It's because Captain America is a soldier and has embraced that from the very beginning, and there's not an issue. If it's a defined enemy, there's not an issue.
In the first movie, he says that the German doctor comes in and asks him, he says, "Why are you in this? Are you in this to kill Nazis?" And he's like, I'm not doing this to kill Nazis. I just don't like bullies. Right. And he's willing to put a bullet in those bullies' heads.
Right. I mean, he's willing to take it to that nth degree. And so when I look at that from a military aspect or my historical aspect of it, I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. I don't have a problem with that. I can embrace that character. I can actually put that character into the appropriate box of experiences that I've had, people that I've met, and kind of say, oh, okay, I can figure out where they go.
Steve just makes sense.
Sometimes. Not always.
Well, I mean, no character makes sense all the time.
Right. And for me, Batman makes sense to a point when if he's rounding up the crazies because they're committing crimes, but once they cross that line and start committing mass murder,
violent crimes.
And the violent crimes, and everything starts going to that point, the response required for solving that has exponentially increased.
There's a difference when you're facing against the Penguin, and he says, "I'm going to unleash an army of penguins, and they're going to have lasers on their backs, and I'm going to conquer Gotham." And then the Joker, who's like, "I'm going to shoot kids in the head."
I mean, actually, and that's the thing. The Joker's not going to say it. He's just going to say, "What's this?"
Yeah, he's just going to do it. Yeah.
Oh, you can't even prepare for what the Joker is going to do.
Yeah.
And the only way to be that is to be willing to accept the horribleness and respond in kind.
Yeah.
All right.
But whole bag of crazy.
Yeah.
Ron, do you have anything to cap that with, or?
I think you said it all.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
All right, we're moving on.
I agree with you.
We're getting
I'll give
into
you one.
we're getting into the lighter end of our questions as we're moving towards the end. Number 7. Why is it called The Killing Joke, Ron?
Because I think Batman killed him at the end of the Joker's joke.
Was it not just that the joke was a killer?
No, it wasn't that funny.
Alex, do you have a different interpretation?
I always thought I always took the name The Killing Joke is that the joke is on Batman because he actually had to become the killer to solve the problem. That's how I always took
like
that the joke's on you.
Yeah.
You're just like me.
Surprise!
Okay. No. Yes. All right, we already touched on this one a little bit, so I want to throw this one to Alex, and we're just going to kind of briefly go over this again, because we already, just trying to find the appropriate page. I didn't organize these at all, which was truly and utterly a mistake. There it is. Boom.
Now you know why I normally run the computer while these guys are talking about various things.
I've done really well up until this exact point.
I know my limits. I sit right here and I look pretty.
This is
Pretty.
like my 11th hour of work today, literally. Okay, so just tell us a little bit of how Brian Bolliard's coloring techniques and his use of reds particularly kind of shape the difference between the past and the present in the story. Alex, just give us kind of a brief sum up on this.
Well, when you're in the present, everything is in full color, and it's very distinct colors. There's not a lot of grayscale or shading. I mean, it's very noticeable colors. When you go into the historical portion of it, it's almost sepia without being sepia, and they just have the red overtones. And you have to, if you go back through psychology and you look at dreams, if you dream in red, that's generally horrible dreams or nightmares, things like that. particular elements in the dream will be in red, and those are the triggers that generally, if you recall the dream, those are the trigger points within the dream. The red hood. I don't know why the shrimp, other than the fact that they're being destroyed and torn apart limb by limb through the whole thing.
In the fly trap in the earlier one, those flies are dying.
Everything is surrounding the weak are being preyed upon, and everything, and so and he is part of that. But it's what he's preying upon, or what's immediately around him, that's causing that. And I just really appreciated how they pulled that out and kept consistent with it, with that coloring and stuff. Just that overtone of, these are the bad trigger points. These are the things that are going to be his failure points when he thinks about them in the future.
And I think that he's fixated on those, and those are sort of ingrained in his brain for whatever reason. And like I say, my take on this was he's fabricating most of this in his own memory, but there's something that is connecting those pieces.
Yeah.
Don't know what.
All right. Just want to reiterate, the art is probably just my favorite part about this book.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really stunning, and it's not just the drawings, the color.
Yeah. Imagine the story if it was just that. If it was just reading a script, you would get a totally different feel, as opposed to just
or if it
visual.
was black and white.
Oh yeah.
Well, if the whole thing was just black and white, you would
miss
lose
so much.
you would lose a lot. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love graphic novel or graphic album or graphic whatever you want to
these
call
things.
Is that visual medium is so much more. I mean, because you can see the color change. The fourth frame, the red is going away. The purple is starting to show up on his coat. It's
More
getting
green.
more. It's more. The green is starting to show up, and then we have the stark purple, the white face, the red blood in the lips, and everything. And it's just, we've gone from that trigger point has minimized as we're going through the thing to we're now something completely different. Because I'm pretty sure he wasn't wearing a purple suit when he started this whole thing.
No.
But as you follow through with this, it's just I like how they're doing it with regards to using color as part of the storytelling methodology.
All right, so we're moving on, and the Killing Joke. We talked about its legacy at the beginning of the show and how popular it is and how it's been influential to other Batman media. So the question is why do you think that is thus, and what specific impacts have you seen in other comics and just the Batman universe as a whole? And we're going to start that off with the Throne of Babies, which we have not mentioned yet.
Oh,
Just,
man.
Jim Gordon is the small people strip him naked, and they're about to send him on this roller coaster of terror, and you also see the dead realtor on the toy here.
Just left there to rot.
They throw him at the feet of the Joker's throne on a pile of dead babies.
This freaked me out.
Yeah, it's just
part
really
freaked me
Well,
out.
I
really
love
messed
the
up.
fact that there's baby heads that are on fire on either side.
The torches.
They're baby heads.
I didn't see that.
So I think, and
fantastic.
Ron, reiterating. So this is the best Batman story ever told. It's highly influential to all the Batman media. Why? And where do you see it?
I think it sets the tone for the Joker. The Joker is not above doing horrible things, and there is no line that he is unwilling to cross to make a point, and that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make a point.
It's a blank sheet of paper. There's no lines.
Yeah. I think, and honestly, I think given more time, because he was really trying to shortcut the whole process of insanity. Given a month or two with Gordon alone, I think he'd have broken him.
Oh.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think
if he'd have just,
I think it's to Gordon's credit that he was
held
able to
together,
walk away. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't think anyone is going to survive a month with a Joker and not go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and what I think this did as a medium is, like other Alan Moore things, it removed restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
The Batman stories up until this point, there was a lot of restrictions by DC. There was a lot of restrictions with the comic code and things like that.
Just pausing you real quick. Coming to this point, the main Batman media that people have in their heads picking up these comics is the Adam West Show.
Right, exactly.
Batman,
I mean, everything. There was a bunch of sanitation that went around the whole process, and it was always relatively family friendly. It was a little darker than the Superman things and stuff like that, but it was still family friendly. This, all of a sudden, all the family friendly went away. Yeah. The fact that you see Barbara get stripped, and the shooting. I mean, there's other comics that have dealt with that, but the shooting was one thing. But then the stripped and the photographs, and
she's covered in blood in those photographs,
right?
And they were shown to her father, who is also naked on a roller coaster.
Right, exactly. What they have done is they've said, all right, short of showing all the dangly bits, we can go forward with this, and we can actually establish something very, very disturbing. The little bald midgets in their fishnet stockings and everything else that's going on. You just the characterizations and everything else like that went to a point where all of a sudden a major DC character was in a less than favorable visual structure, and it just that in itself puts you at a point where other authors coming in afterwards said, well, all right, if we know he can go that far, maybe we can go a little bit farther and a little bit farther and a little bit farther, and we can start, because if I remember correctly, Dark Knight came after this.
I thought it was before, but I'll look it up right now.
Okay.
But we talked about that earlier, is this trend in the late 80s where you have these darker comic books like The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen.
Well, but also think about that's when DC released the Vertigo line.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, when DC came out and said, wait a second, we have people who grew up in the 60s and 70s who liked comics but don't want this
kiddie stuff.
This sanitized version of things. Well, maybe we can get away with a mature line. Out came Sandman, out came Hellblazer, and you all of a sudden DC started going, hey, this is making money.
Works, yeah.
These stories are okay. We're able to make move with this, and it's not being censored. It's not being thrown out. People are not coming back and yelling at it. And the controversy that is being raised by it is selling more comic books, so maybe we can keep pushing it a little bit. And I think this was one of the seminal ones that said, all right, let's see if we can be successful with this. And not only was it successful, but like you said, it started rewriting the canon.
Yeah. Dark Knight is 1986, and this is 1988.
Okay.
But, I mean...
But Dark Knight is still very sanitized.
Yeah, this is more... It is a violent book, but not in the graphic way that this is
right.
violent.
It doesn't get into this level of how bad things can be.
Right.
Because even the violence in that is mostly at a distance.
And Frank Miller's Batman is very dark, but it's more tonal.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Ron, do you have anything to add to that? No? All right. I'm going to throw this one to Ron again. We're wrapping up these discussion questions. This is our last one. Director Chris Nolan encouraged Heath Ledger to read The Killing Joke as part of his preparation for his role as the Joker. What reflections of Alan Moore's Joker do you see in The Dark Knight, Ron?
The Heath Ledger Joker actually scared me. Just that you could tell that he was unhinged, or he played a very good unhinged person, and that's what I got out of this story. Was you have an individual who has zero qualms about doing anything, and that's I think that's that Heath Ledger took that and ran with it. I think he did a really good job with it.
Oh, I wholeheartely agree. Like you said earlier, chaos personified. And I think Heath Ledger... Oh, well, okay, so you said that.
I thought
Sorry.
I don't get a lot of credit in these things, Alice. Let me have that.
Give this to me.
But I think Heath Ledger really was that chaos personified. I don't know if it's true or not, but the myth around the one where the hospital blows up and he's sitting there hitting the button and it doesn't work, and he starts banging it because it really wasn't working.
Didn't go off,
and everything was off. And then when it went off, he was like, "Hey," and just kept going. That he played into that so well that okay, something didn't happen. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah.
There was no oh geez, what went wrong? Let me turn around and go back. No, it was just, all right, we're just going to keep moving. And that whole chaos personified, I think, this Joker had intention in mind. It didn't work out the way he had thought.
And he was just going to roll with it.
But, it didn't stop him from doing it.
Mm-hmm. All right. We are moving towards the landing. We have a couple quick questions here. These are questions we're going to be asking for all the books we read. Alex, who's your favorite character in this book?
My favorite character in this book is
setting all other Batman stuff
Right.
aside, just within the story.
Is the Joker when he's dressed in the shorts and hat, just when he shoots her,
Yeah,
and then
at the
begins
door,
and,
hold on.
and
Like
right,
Hawaiian shirt.
that one when he begins telling all the librarian jokes. That was my favorite thing in the whole. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah.
Those were so just witty. I loved those.
That was so-
it was horrible.
Yeah.
But it is so witty.
So this
that Joker, I love that Joker.
Yeah.
there's 3 shots in this. There's 3 panels in this
There's
book
only one shot. I think she took it.
that I think are like 3 of the most iconic images of the Joker of all time. This is one.
Yeah.
The other one is him when he comes out of the gunk.
Right,
It's
yeah.
like that. And then the other one is him sitting on the throne.
Yeah.
But they are just phenomenal. I'm going to go ahead and go over to the jokes because I literally think that these are just funny. All the
They were
horribleness
they were so
inside.
Like, coffee table edition, but the can't
The
tell
spine
the-
is broken.
The spine is broken. There's a hole in the jacket.
Oh my god!
Wow, these are brilliant.
And while this is happening, Jim's like, oh my god, and then Jim's getting beat up by Joker's henchmen, and it's just...
But I love it. He's got dark socks on and big old shoes. I mean, it's like, what an outfit.
It's a fashion disaster, and it just works.
It works.
I mean, I look at
A-list.
it that that's your your typical dad summer outfit. He's like, oh God, Dad, I can't go out with you. Why? I'm dressed just like the Joker.
Ron, do you have a favorite character?
I like the Joker a lot, obviously. I like when he's at the very end and he's defeated, he's like, go ahead, kick the crap out of me, whatever, because he does not care.
For me, like many other books, Jim Gordon just stands out. Because, I read comics to see, to find people that I think could be a better version of myself. And also to see super people that I could never be. But but Jim Gordon, to make it through that, I'm not sure that I would have been broken. He just that outstanding moral fiber to come out of there and say, bring him in by the book.
I'd have asked Batman for the keys to the Batmobile and I'd have run him over.
Run him over. Yeah,
The end of it.
I know. It's
And back up and go forward.
all right. Favorite moment. I think my favorite moment is Jim Gordon coming out and saying, "Go get him, Tiger! Pat him on the back. Let's do this right." Ron, was your favorite part in this book, or also this scene? This scene is just so iconic.
This is mine. This
Yeah.
is my favorite scene in the whole thing.
I mean, I like the end. I liked the finality of it. I think, in my mind, the finality of it.
A nitpick? Do you have a particular nitpick? We are nerds. We are comic book nerds. We live to nitpick. Well,
I'm sure you do.
I can't think of a single thing that I didn't like about this book.
My initial disappointment was just that it didn't live up to how it was described to me. But in terms of the construction of the story, it is pretty well put together.
Yeah, everything put together works really well.
I mean, my only nitpick was the whininess of the pre-Joker character.
Yeah, but I think that works in the story.
I agree, but I still I had
Does it lessen the Joker? You think?
Okay.
It does to me. It if that's the origin story, it always makes the Joker into be less than the chaos that I appreciate.
I think I see what you're saying, and I'm going to throw this to Star Wars like I do with many things. That's what I call the Hayden Christensen rule, where everybody's like, I hate Hayden Christensen so much because in Attack of the Clones he's just so whiny. But that's the character, and he's playing the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where that character should be.
See, I blame George Lucas.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
That's just, come on.
All right, we've already...
Actually, that was the one that made me quit watching Star Wars.
that's all. All right. All right, so we're coming back around. We're done with our discussion questions. We also have the what do we find humorous, but we've talked a lot about the humor. So just want to quickly mention the film adaptation. DC produced a animated film of this that has kind of two parts to it. Setting aside the first part, which we'll talk about in a minute, the last 45 minutes, hour of it is like a straight adaptation of this, where they take the comic and just use it as the panels. Like they gave the animators, this is your panels, follow it. It is almost flawless. You get Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill back as Batman and the Joker, and they are both phenomenal, particularly Mark Hamill. And you get to see Mark Hamill do that dark Joker that never really happens in Batman the Animated Series, and it's really just great. Can't really recommend it enough, except there's this bit at the beginning, this first 30 minutes. Ron, what was up with that?
See, I actually like...
What happened? Tell us what happened.
All right, so in the beginning of the animated series, it sets up
the movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
Not Batman the Animated Series.
Different thing. So in the beginning of the movie, there is a whole bit between Barbara and Bruce where they get together, and I like that.
They have sex.
They've got a lot of it
on a roof.
A lot of squishy bat
super
things happening.
Awkward, and it was horrible to watch.
The only thing, the age difference was
really... So it's not manga sex?
Yeah.
Nope.
Nope. But I like that because that then gave more credence to the Joker can really push Batman's buttons even harder now because of this attraction between Batman
But wasn't the Joker trying to push Gordon's buttons?
Right, but he'd already beat the crap out of Gordon.
But that's the point. That story was getting the Batman and Barbara together and making it so that the Joker was really going after Batman, when in this story he's not.
It adds a little bit of depth because you have that scene in the comic where Batman goes and sees Barbara in the hospital.
And she knows who he is.
Yeah, and you're not, unless you're reading the actual comics, that doesn't invoke a lot of feelings in you. But they have that part in the animated film so that you already know there's an established relationship between these two characters. It makes it a little harder.
And he's not getting any more from her.
Yeah, it makes it easier for Batman to kill him, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, all right.
Or not.
I think we need to stop that. All right.
Or put him back in the asylum and hope it works this time.
All right, so final thoughts on The Killing Joke.
I recommend it. I would make sure that you have a little more history or background of Batman.
Yep.
And not just the movies, not the TV shows. Yeah. Read, and I'm not saying read 500 issues of Detective Comics. I'm saying pick up some of the stories from the 70s.
More like 900.
Yeah. Prior to this, there wasn't that many. But pick up some stories from the 60s, some stories from the 70s, and kind of see the evolution of the Batman character and get some of that history. Then be able to jump into this.
Throwing out some titles: Long Halloween, Year One, Hush, Death in the Family.
Yeah.
Throwing out some stuff there. I like Death Mask. That's a Batman manga. It's cool.
Batman manga.
Final thoughts, Ron?
Good book. Solid book. In a word.
Would you recommend it to someone?
I would definitely recommend it. I would recommend it, but I would with the caveat of if you're not familiar with it, read it a couple times.
And it's ironic that you both say that because this is often portrayed as like an introduction. Like this is like, oh, this is the first thing you should read. Yeah. There's a quote on the front of this, and I'm trying not to bash Tim Burton through this thing. It's real hard. So there's a quote from Tim Burton that says, I love The Killing Joke. It's my favorite comic. It's the first comic I've ever loved. And if you like read into it, he actually goes into like, it's the only good comic and everything else is... And you can see that in his movies. But we're not going into that.
I was going to say, what? He's not reading Saga? He's not reading...
Yeah, I don't think Saga was around, but...
Cerebus? Jeez. Moonshadow?
Bone?
So we kind of randomly came to Killing Joke to be our first project. And I was kind of like... I'm glad, because we wanted to pick something that was popular to start off with. But, like I said, the first time I read it, I was kind of disappointed. And since then, I've read it 3 times, and I think my appreciation for this book has grown immensely. And I'm at the point where I can say, I like this book a lot. I would recommend it. I would not say it's the best Batman book that's ever been written.
No,
I've not read all of them, so I couldn't.
Well, no, I haven't.
even the one-offs. There's some other one-offs out there that I really enjoy, and I think I enjoy them more for kind of the artistic capabilities.
I really
Arkham
like
Asylum.
Yeah, I really like Hush. Hush is one of my favorites. Yeah. Hush is really good. All right, so we're done with the Killing Joke. We have a couple regular segments here that we're going to do. So, Alex, what are you reading right now?
Two big things I'm reading right now are Saga, Brian Vaughan's current book, and well, actually, three things I'm reading and I'm really enjoying right now: Saga, East of West, and Lazarus. I believe they're all Image titles, of course, because there's not a superhero amongst any of it. But I'm a lot more oriented towards long story, big story arcs that are have a little more realism or a little more, the world building that's around them is pretty impressive. And in all three of those, all of those have that same kind of, it's recognizable, but they've gone, to another level with it.
I'm very similar. Like, my three things. I'm always reading manga, and manga are usually very long stories.
Yeah.
Lots of world building, and that's a big part of what I like about comics, and that's also a big reason why I'm a Star Wars fan, and I read every Star Wars comic ever. So currently, I'm reading all the Star Wars comics, and
but it's Star Wars.
Yeah. I'm also, still keeping up with Walking Dead, but what I've been reading recently, I've been on this huge Spider-Man kick, where I'm just reading a lot of Amazing Spider-Man. I've been doing all this Marvel stuff, kind of gearing up for Infinity War, and I just did 2 months of nothing but Spider-Man, mostly Amazing Spider-Man. But what I've been reading this week is Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, which is the stories of Hawkeye when he's off duty.
The one is laundry.
Hawkeye finds
I'm not
a
quite
lost.
sure I'd be able to get through that.
No, it's great. You really should try it. It may be actually what I pick to do, but it's Hawkeye finds a lost dog. Hawkeye buys a car. It's really, really great, and it sounds silly, but it's phenomenal. It's really
it's a
great.
neat premise.
Yeah.
It is
All
neat.
right. Well, I must admit, I did do a full run, a superhero run. I read probably up to the first Deadpool movie. I read, I think, every Deadpool that was out there.
Really?
I've always liked Deadpool just because he gave his finger to the whole institution, and the whole fourth wall breaking was very early into Deadpool and stuff like that. But there's some of the storylines that just go so anti-superhero, anti-everything.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one series that he wants to die. He really wants to die, and he can't figure out how to do it. And he's trying to convince he's going to do bad things so the Avengers kill him, but it's not working.
Yeah.
So he's decided he's going to piss off the Hulk and have the Hulk just beat him until he's atoms, because obviously at that point he can't come back. And the whole thing, the Hulk won't do it. And no matter how much he pisses the Hulk off, the Hulk just, no, I'm not going to do it. Go away, Wade. You're fine.
Bad Wade.
I mean, it's
Stupid Avenger.
it is so hysterical, but it's so sad in the same aspect because of the, I want to die. I am tired of this existence. I can't do this anymore. It's not what I want, and and not being allowed to. And I just find that was one of the few superhero kind of things that I actually stuck with and read everything I could get my hands on.
Yeah. There's a new book this week. We're totally going to date the cast here, but it's called You Are Deadpool.
Yes, the Choose Your Own Adventure one.
We talked about that on this week.
That was this week at Four Horsemen yesterday. So
That's awesome.
All right, so
Cool.
I think I know the answer to this already without asking, but Ron, what are you reading right now?
Wait. Does it have a star in the title?
No, actually the answer is nothing.
Absolutely nothing. No, I don't read much.
Times.
And
And
everything,
the store.
all the credibility that you've built up in this episode out the window.
There are reasons I don't read.
I wish we had a window up here.
There are reasons I don't read.
All right, so we're going to put a wrap on this. We will be doing our next episode. Alex is going to give us a little bit of an intro for our next book that you can read in May, and then that episode 2, will be out the first Saturday of June. Ron, Alex, what are we reading in May?
I'm going to not go back not quite as far as 1988. It's in the early 90s. Ted McKeever is one of my favorite authors, and he had a number of series, and one of the ones that stuck with me for the longest was Metropole. And it had a follow-up, Metropole AD. I think Metropole itself is either 10 or 12 issues, and AD was 6 or 8 issues. They kind of make one storyline, but he has a way of having these very harsh style in his drawings and his characterization, but really brings out a lot of emotion out of the characters, even ones that have these very simplistic faces, but the way he does the hard lines and the cuts and stuff with them. But he deals with some bigger concepts between the nature of good and evil, and it's dealing with these angels have kind of start showing up, and at the same time these demons start showing up. And this town is being walled off because this is the place, and are they going to try and keep everything in here? And can the angels get some kind of semblance of order, or can they destroy the whole place?
Yeah.
And it asks it deals with some big concepts and stuff like that, but it does it without ever getting too maudlin. It doesn't try and beg your forgiveness for anything. It just goes full force into this. And I like how he does it. And if you read any other Ted McKeever, you'll see hints of some of the other characters that show up in other books of his. The Eddie Current, the one that finds Eddie Current, the nun who finds Eddie Current shows up in these books.
Right.
And then some of these characters show up in other things as they go along and stuff. And they're really good, and it's a good introduction into a lot of quote-unquote alternative comics, the non-superhero lines, where they were never designed to be run for 1,000 issues. They were designed for a single 12 to 14 issue story.
Right, and you can expect we will be doing our fair share of DC Marvel, but we're also going to dip our toes into quote-unquote alternative comics. I'm going to make Ron read a manga.
He's going to try.
No, you are.
He's going to try.
You want to be on this show? You're going to read that manga.
He's going to try.
Now, it's going to be great. All right, so Metropole, that is our next book. So pick that up, read it in May. We're going to have a little bit of a tighter ending for episode 2 because we're recording this, and I'm not exactly sure all the platforms that this is going to be available on. So I'm just going to give you our general social medias to end this episode. Definitely like us at facebook.com/4horsemancomics. Follow us on Twitter at the number 4 Horseman Comics. Follow us on Instagram at 4 Horseman Comics. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/c/4 Horseman Comics Gaming. Watch all of our streaming content at twitch.tv/4 Horseman Comics. And shop our TCG inventory at shop.4horsemancomics.com. And if you are in the area, check out one or all of our 3 great locations in the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Meadowbrook Mall in Bridgeport, West Virginia, and downtown in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. And before we close, we're going to close every episode with a quote. I want to say thank you, Ron, and thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
And we're going to end this one with a quote from The Killing Joke, and of course, it's from the Joker. So when you find yourself locked onto an unpleasant train of thought, heading for the places in your past where the screaming is unbearable, remember, there's always madness. Madness is the emergency exit. Good night, everybody.